Hello all, good morning, good evening or good afternoon. So we are back as the week 7 is completed. In this video, as we do every time, we'll talk about the questions that were asked on the LinkedIn BCOpenQuiz and the correct answers by actually trying to do that. So before we start doing that, thank you for everyone who participated in the quiz. And as you can see, that there was quite a few more votes on different questions that were asked during this week. So this week there were 988 votes were casted on all the questions that we will be discussing today. I love when you comment on those questions, and I made sure that I include those comments in these recordings. So let's get started with it. So the first question for the previous week was, how many clustered keys can be defined in a Business Central table? So if you create a new table, there is a property called clustered. We talked about that property in the last recording, if I'm not wrong. But how many of clustered key can you define in a Business Central table is a question. The options were 5, 1, 10, and unlimited. And with 144 votes, 69% people thought that you can only create one clustered key in a Business Central table. And the right answer was how majority of people thought about it, that you can have at the max one key which is set to be clustered. It not need to be the primary key. Let's be very clear, as we discussed in the previous video. You don't have to be, you are not forced to set clustered on the primary key. You can set it up only in any key, but there can only be one key which is set to be clustered. And let's have a quick check into it. So I have this table where by default the primary key is clustered, but which is not a mandate. But if I create a key 2 and I name it as key 2, and let's say I do it on name, and if I try to set it to clustered true, what happens is I get an error message that clustered key 2 has, the clustered key has already been defined on this table. So you cannot have two keys where the clustered property is true. You can, and you're not forced, as I'm saying, to set it on primary key. And if you only set it on one of the key, either primary or the secondary key, it works. But you cannot have multiple keys where the clustered property is set to true. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's move to the next question. Question number 2. The question was, is it possible to create a unique key using a table extension? And the options were, yes, you can create a unique key from table extension. The second one was false, that you cannot create a unique key using table extension. The majority of people where they voted is true if the table is extensible. And the last option was true if table is internal. With 141 votes into this question, the 45% people thought that it is true if table is extensible. So let's test it out. So let's create a new table extension. Okay, let me create a table extension, and let's try to extend our favorite table, which is customer. And we all know that the customer table is set to be extensible true, and I'm not adding any fields into it. So let's see the customer table first. The extensible false is not mentioned on the table properties, which means that this table is set to be extensible true. Now I'll remove the field area from it, and I'll try to add the keys into it. Okay, let's do a T key, and let's name it as key. I prefer to have prefix on the so that if it kind of, it should not overlap with any of the fields, the keys defined by Microsoft. And let me use, let's say, address. That's okay. Now if I want is to be this key as unique, what I'll have to do is set to unique as true. And as I do that, I get an error message here which says property unique is not allowed on a table extension. So using table extensions, you cannot set the unique key property on a key even if the table is extensible. So the right answer for this question was false, that you will not be able to create a unique key using a table extension. Okay, let's move ahead. The next question is, how can you ensure that records in a table don't have the identical value in a non-primary key fields? And then there is a comment from Mahir, which says, let's read the comment. These polls of yours scare me so much. It is mind-blowing how many wrong answers get given. And as you can see my reply to Mahir, I'm also a little bit surprised based on the incorrect answers. But the idea here of this quiz is to make sure that if there are confusions or incorrect info around certain features or certain development practices in Business Central, we share our knowledge with each other and try to learn from each other. And that's the reason I don't put names of the people who answered it incorrectly or correctly, because that's not the intention of these quizzes. The idea of this quiz is to make sure that if there is a confusion, we together figure it out and find out the right answers to it. So thanks Mahit for the comment, and hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Coming back to the question, how you can ensure that the record and table does not have identical values in a non-primary key fields. So as we discussed in the previous video, that the primary key field of the primary key constraint makes sure that all the fields in the primary key should not have the similar value in multiple record. But how you make sure that that happens in a non-primary key field? The options were that set that property to be clustered true. The other option was to set maintain SQL index to true. The third one was set unique property to true, and the fourth one that it is impossible. With 116 votes into this question, 55% people thought set unique property to true is the correct answer, and there's no surprise, that is the right answer. So let's test it out. What happens when you set a value or a field, non-primary key field, to be unique on the table that you have created? So let me delete this table extension for a while. Okay. And then I have this table where I have 4 fields, code, which is a primary key field. So no two records can have the same value because it's a primary key field. But think of it as a retail business where yes, code makes sense to be the primary key. But for me as a business, I also would like to have phone number to be unique so that I don't have 2 customers with the same phone number. And in that case, what I can do is I can create a key and say this is my S or unique key with my prefix, and I choose the field phone number into it. Okay, and I set it to unique true. It went pretty far. Okay, unique to true, and that will make my phone number as the unique key on this table. Now let's deploy this, and and let's search for this page which we have created. Let me see the page name. The page is called SDH Customs. So let's open that. Okay, this is a list page which allows me to enter records. So I can go ahead and create new and say this is my code 001. The name is Saurav, name 2 or last name is Danny, and my phone number is 7854567891. Okay, now if I try to do 001, it'll say your change might update the record, which can take a while. Do you want to continue? And I say yes, and it says you cannot do that because the record already exists with code 001. So that's just the primary key constraint, that I cannot create 2 records with the same value on the primary key fields. but let's try to create a new record with a unique code. And let's say it Gaurav, and let's say Dhyani. Okay, I'll try to copy the phone number again, and here you get again a unique key violation, because there is already a record in table custom table 1 that has the same value in a unique index, which is phone number with this value. So if you want to create a new record, make sure that this phone number is different from the previous phone number, and if you do so, the system will retain your values. So what I can do is I can do this and then change this to 0, and I'll be able to save it. So using the unique property on the table that you're creating, you can make a unique or a pseudo primary key, more or less, which acts on your behalf as a pseudo primary key. So if you don't want identical values on a non-primary key field, use the unique key property. But remember, you can't do unique using table extension, so you will not be able to set unique on a table which does not belong to your extension. It can only happen on a table that belongs to your extension. Okay, moving forward, the next question was, which of the following is a system key automatically added to all tables in Business Central? I should have reworded the question in a different way. Sorry for that, but let's go ahead with it, because I think I'm correct over that part also, or maybe I'm wrong. So the options were system ID, system created by, secondary key, and primary key. Now, with 167 votes into this question, 5% people thought primary key. Now, the primary key is defined by the developer who is developing that table. Either you as a developer on your extension, or a developer at Microsoft Office who is building the base or the system application, or an ISV developer who is building the ISV app. So primary key are not automatically added. Secondary key, nobody answered, but the rule goes same for that. System created by is not a key which is automatically added. It's a system field which is automatically added, and I'll show it to you. But it is not a key, and we'll see what that means. But the system ID is the field or the key which gets automatically added on all the tables when you create a new table. And the correct answer is system ID. Let's have a quick look into it. So we created this table. When you look at it, and you can do it with any other table from any other extension, you only see 4 fields here, which is code, name, name2, phone number, and this. But when you try to create, let's say, a page on this, and you give it the name of SDH custom table 1, let's say page is called test, and whatever your page type is, you'll see that other than those fields, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields, out of which there is one called system ID. Now this field is important, and I'll bring back your attention to this table, which is called SDH custom table 1. So when I go into SQL Server and try to filter on the tables which contain SDH in their name, I should end up with 2 tables at this moment, which is custom table 1 we are checking, right? So on custom table 1, when you look at the column, you see the 4 fields which are added by the users. The timestamp is a predefined SQL field, but additionally you will see that these 4 fields are created. But automatically what you'll see that there is a primary key which is defined by the user. There is this unique key which I have defined in my extension for the previous question, which is this one. Additionally, there is one more key called system ID, which is set to be, and I cannot show it here. Let me see it here. Okay. This is primary key, this is system key, system ID. So when you look at it, this is set to be unique, and this gets added on every table. You get a system ID which acts as a pseudo primary key, more or less, as a unique identifier for the record that you're pointing at. So every record gets a unique system ID. So when you look at it, Control Alt F1, you will notice that there's a system ID associated with 001, which starts with 859D6. When you switch to the second record, you get a different system ID. So the system ID is a default unique key added by the platform on every table that you create in your system or in your extension. Same goes for Microsoft or any other ISV. When they are building extension, the system ID will get added on each and every table. And you can just check it on any other table. Let's filter it on. Let's look for $customer, which is my customer table. So when you look at the customer table, you will notice that there is a system ID and the primary key. So when you look at the primary key, you will notice that this is pointing to the code field. Whereas when you look at the system ID, this points to the system ID, which is a unique identifier for each record that exists into this table. So system ID is the right answer for this question. Let's move ahead to the next question. Which of the following statement is incorrect regarding the include field properties for the keys? The options were: include fields work with primary key. The second one is include field work with secondary key. The third option was the include field improves the SQL query performance. And the fourth option were adds extra non-key fields into the keys. So based on the voting percentage, majority of people thought that it is allowing you to add extra non-key fields into a key is the right answer, which is 45%. And then we see a differentiation between that it allows you to include fields into the primary key. So let's judge this. Let's check this. So when we come here and we have this table, so we have this primary key which is set to be code. Can I do include fields? Let's try that. And let's try name 2. Okay. The primary key PK on the table, the first on the list, must not have the include field property set. So it does not work with the primary key. So our first option, that include field works with primary key, is incorrect. Does it work with the secondary key? Let's check that. It does work with the secondary key or even with the unique key. Does it improve SQL performance? Yes, because the new field is now part of the key that's being added. And does it add extra non-key fields? Yes, it does add non-key fields into the index that is being added. So the right answer, as we figured out on the first one, or the wrong answer, or the incorrect option is it works with the primary key. Include fields does not work with the primary key. They work with the secondary key. They surely improve the SQL query performance when you are trying to fetch the data from SQL Server, because that field is part of the index and it adds extra non-key fields into the key that you are being added into the secondary keys. Hopefully that's clear. Let's move to the next question. Is it possible to create clustered key using a table extension? The options were true, yes you can using table extension. Then other option was false, that you cannot. The third was true if the table is set to extensible, and the fourth one true if table is marked as internal. With 131 votes into it, 67% people thought that it is not possible to create a clustered key using table extension. So let's quickly create a table extension and see. Okay. And let's try to extend our favorite table. Okay. And let's try to add a key into it. Let's pick any field. Let's say search name, and let's try doing clustered is equal to true. And what it says? It says clustered is not allowed on a table extension. Even if the table is set to be extensible, you're not allowed to use clustered using table extension. So the correct answer is what majority of people thought, which is it is not allowed to create clustered key or and a unique key using table extension, as we tested earlier. Moving to the next question. What is the primary function of secondary key? Now this is very interesting because we understand primary keys because they do certain things. They make sure that the values are unique on those fields. But what is the use of secondary keys? And the options were: it enforces data integrity, it stores data in a specific order, it creates an index for faster data retrieval from the database, and the fourth is uniquely identify rows. With 132 votes, 78% people thought that index, which is faster data retrieval, is the primary function of secondary key. And when you read the documentation around it on Microsoft, that's the right answer. Because when you are doing your code, writing your code, and if you have the field in the right order as they are available in the key, in your secondary keys, you will be able to do data retrieval faster than the data retrieval without a key. So that's the main function of a secondary key. Moving to the next question. What is the purpose of unique property in a key definition? And the options were: enforce data integrity, ensure that values are unique, create a clustered index, and improve query performance. And with 90% of votes, this is how people thought about it. And then there was a comment from Chaitanya on it that it doesn't allow to select multiple choices on this question on LinkedIn, or in any question on the LinkedIn, I guess. In this case, I might have chosen two answers. And now I'm curious, Chaitanya, whatever your two answers would be. But let's think about it. Does it enforce data integrity? Not exactly, as we have just seen that. Does it ensure that the values are unique? Yes, we have tested it out. That unique property makes sure that the values are unique. Does it create a clustered index? Now this is what I would like to see, that what happens when there is an index which is clustered. So if you look at it right now, there's the code which is clustered to true, and then the unique is phone number on our SDH table. So if I try to search for SDH table, okay, let's do that. So we have two keys here. One is system ID, one is primary key which is clustered, and the two, which is the system ID and the unique key that I've created, both are non-clustered. So it doesn't create a clustered index for sure. Does it improves the query performance? It may improve the query performance, but the main purpose of the unique key is to make sure that the values on those fields which are marked as unique, which are part of that key which is marked as unique, is the primary purpose of the unique property. And that's where majority of people answered that ensure that values are unique on that key. Now having said that, that was end of this week questions. If you have any thoughts, comments, or if I was wrong somewhere, do let me know on LinkedIn or on comment to this video. I religiously read all your comments. One request: if you don't like to subscribe to it, that's okay, but please do share these videos, especially these LinkedIn quizzes, to the community so that we all can learn together. The whole idea of doing these quizzes, all the time that I spend into it, is to make sure that we learn something new together. If I'm wrong somewhere, please correct me on the comments or on LinkedIn. Socially, I don't mind that. But if you think this is kind of helping you, make sure to share these so that more and more people interact with these quizzes or polls and we all learn together. So that's the whole idea. I'll see you sooner than later into the next video in this series. I was out for a week, but I'm back to my office or home, and I'll continue doing whatever I do, and I'll see you sooner than later on to the next video. Till then, keep learning and keep sharing whatever you're learning, and let's make this as the best community in the world. Thank you and have a nice day.